Too Good Sports with Hamo and Greggy.
Welcome to Too Good Sports. Greg, pretty flash.
Yeah. Those on the podcast obviously can't see, but those watching us via YouTube or Facebook can see now that we've got these microphones. Frank Hyde, for those in the rugby league, he'd be very proud of these microphones.
Absolutely. Later on, Greggy, if we've got time, we might get you to sing something. I'd imagine something from the 80s from you. Frankie Goes to Hollywood or a bit of Wham.
Yeah, no, thanks, Hamo. I appreciate that. Dynamic Hypnotics, thank you. Oringo Boingo.
All right, we've got a big week of sport to cover. A couple of close games, a couple of blowouts in the NRL. The World Cup team should be named in the next day or so.
Yep.
Some exciting stuff coming up, so let's rip into it. Around the sporting world in 90 seconds. Let's start off with the Australian surf lifesaving titles.
Yeah.
Northcliffe, yet again. I don't know how many titles that is in the last 20 years. They are an amazing club.
They are. It all started back in 1975. That's what I've been told. With people like myself and Mark Ferguson were there, and we came. We came 15th in the state titles back then. So obviously that was great beginnings for the club.
And there were how many teams?
15.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Mark Ferguson would have kicked on, but obviously you didn't. Let's move on to a fair dinkum champion, Shannon Eckstein. It was his farewell yesterday.
Yep.
He didn't get the fairy tale ending I guess he wanted. But congratulations to young Max Brooks. He denied him of that. He, really well planned out event by him. But let's have a look at what he's done now. Eckstein. He's had 8 Australian Ironman titles, 6 world titles, and 9 Kellogg's Nutrigrain Ironman titles. He'll go down as one of the greats, if not the greatest, in that.
I think the greatest. Guy Leach, obviously, Hendy, Kenny. I think he might have won a Weet-Bix title too, young Eckstein. So overall, brilliant, great to see. Great end of career. I don't think he's going to struggle out of the game.
No, we're not having a whip around for him this week, are we?
No.
Greg, you wanted to mention you were trying to watch it.
I tried to watch it. That's right. Thank you for reminding me. I tried to watch it. I tried every channel on free-to-air and also on pay TV. I couldn't find it. No matter what channel I tried, no matter where I tried, I plugged in every number in the world. I couldn't find it, which is pretty disgusting for one of our major sporting events in Australia. I wasn't happy. But so be it. Hopefully somebody picks it up again next year. It's a great event, and it was a great victory to Mac Brooks. And also in the women's, the Iron Woman, Georgia Miller. Fantastic effort by her, and another legend coming, I think Courtney Hancock might have come second, did she?
I think third.
Third, yeah. With another great effort from an Australian legend in Courtney Hancock.
All right, let's move on to AFL. The Lions have proven they're the real deal, at least in this early stage, I guess. A couple of our followers, Jimmy Shee and Tommy Cassidy, were telling me earlier to get on the Lions. They're to make the 8. Early days, but that's 3 in a row. They beat Port Adelaide on the weekend.
Yep, and based on those 2 blokes, I wouldn't have backed them. But in reality, they're doing well. They've won 3 in a row. The 6-6-6, 6 in the middle, 6 at the back, 6 at the front, it suits them. They're a quicker side than some of these other sides, and they're off to a great start. And I think they can make the 8. I said it last week. I'm going to stick with that. I think they can make the 8.
And that's after losing Dane Beams. A
great player, brilliant player. They're still playing well without him, and I think they can make the 8.
All right, moving to rugby. Aussies are dominating in the Super Rugby at the moment, Greg.
Dominating means we've won 1 game in a row. So, yeah, we are dominating. The Rebels beat the Sunwolves. That's a given. However, probably one of the biggest results was the fact that you saw there that I think Auckland Blues just beat the Waratahs, but Queensland Reds had a good win. And well done the Jaguars. They had a win over in South Africa, which isn't an Australian team, obviously, but well done to them.
Quade Cooper seems a bit sort of
he's playing
reinvented.
He's playing good football. He's playing very good football. He's a very good footballer, has been for a long time. It's his off-field stuff, but he seems to have got that right too, I think.
All right. Okay, that's our around the sporting world in 90 seconds. We were pretty close to 90 seconds this time, Greg.
I think we were close.
I think the first week or the second week were about around the sporting world in 90 seconds was about 7.5 minutes, so we're getting there. All right.
That is as good as it will be in the National Rugby
let's roll in now to League Our Way.
Yep.
What a round we've had. What an incredible round. 4 games by 2 points or less, including three golden point matches. Greggy, incredible round.
Yeah. I said I'll have a look after 5 weeks. We've got 1 week to go, but geez, the Roosters look good.
Yeah, they do.
They look good. Outside that, it looks like a pretty even comp.
Look, there's been some great form continued by the likes of the Eels,
Yep.
Manly,
Yep.
Raiders, your mob, the Dragons. But on the other side of the coin, there's been a big hole, and it's getting even bigger by the 3 Queensland teams, the Titans, the Cowboys, and the Broncos.
Yeah, the Titans, I know we put a bit of a vote out there on a song for them at the moment, but you and I keep supporting them. I'm going to give Ash Taylor and Roberts 1 more week.
All right. Let's have a look through the round that was.
Let's go through the round.
First of all, Thursday, this is still hurting a bit, but Thursday the Roosters hosted the Broncos.
Yep.
You saw we had a competition this week, and it's obviously jackpotting to the coming week.
Yeah,
no one got it. I think Scott McLennan was the closest, one of our followers, with 34 points. It was 32 points. And I think most people didn't see this coming. A lot of people tipped the Roosters, but no one saw this. Look, as you said, the Roosters just are starting to flex their muscle, but without all their stars.
Yeah, so I think we're trying to say, the way we're going here with our podcast and our statement is we'll look at 3 big things from the game. Let's look at 2 or 3 big things from the game. I didn't see that coming. I think the Broncos halves, as we keep saying, they don't seem like they're gelling properly. Even the hooker looks a little bit slow at the moment. And you were going to say probably the third thing was about Pengai Jr., weren't you?
Well, Fittler mentioned it this week, and he's a lot more qualified than I am to mention it. But even us fans out there, we see some brilliance. And I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when he had that dominating display against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
If he can have that consistency 3 times out of every 5 games, then I guess that $1 million mark won't be too far away. But that was a cheap shot. It was undeniable. It was a cheap shot. Players can get hurt. It's not a good image for the game. Parents take their kids away from the game because of those images. He's got 2 weeks again. The Broncos are, again, not at full strength. Every week so far there's someone out. There's been Lodge, Haas, and now him. I think Fittler's hit the nail on the head. He said he's got to control his aggression.
Yeah, he does. Gordon Tallis, we'll move on this. Gordon Tallis said something interesting, not just about the handshake, but letting go of Josh Maguire and Sam Dite. Did they lose another one? They lost those 2 guys. Losing those 2 guys.
Sims.
And Corbin Sims to the Dragon. Those 3 guys, that's a lot of experience to lose. I would have kept one of those 3.
Mm-hmm. Just lastly, like a couple of weeks ago, people were saying a great Broncos forward pack. I think until they can do that consistently, they're a good Broncos forward pack with a lot of potential. Yeah. All right, let's have a look at the next game, the Friday night game, the first Friday night game. We mentioned it briefly. The Warriors and the Titans played at Mount Smart, 26-10 to the Warriors. The Titans just keep giving away big leads, another 20-0 lead.
That's the big story of the game. Yep.
It's hard to come back from that against anyone, particularly over there against the Warriors. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was brilliant in that game for most of it anyway. I think the Titans maybe helped him along with his form. For the Titans, I thought Wallace and Arrow tried their hardest. They're all trying. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
both of those guys made 150 metres. It's just you're giving away too much of a start.
Yeah, agree. Not much more to say.
All right, let's have a look at the other game on Friday, and it was the Panthers versus the Tigers. I'll buy this one. From my point of view, I thought the Tigers were well and truly home. I think they did a little bit what the Broncos did in that 2015 grand final. They tried to just slow things down for about 7 or 8 minutes and just coast home.
Ease into victory.
Yep. And it didn't work against a good side like Penrith. They kept inviting them back in and they came along and took it. Look, it was a much-needed diversion for the Panthers. There's been a lot of talk outside of football in the last week at Penrith about Phil Gould's role, about potentially, him moving on, about a bit of already only after a few rounds, admin and coaches and players particularly not getting on terribly well. a great diversion. Winning does that, doesn't it?
Does it? Correct.
All right, move to Saturday. The first game on Saturday, Manly 13 versus the Rabbitohs 12 at Lotto Land. 2 in a row for Manly. Suddenly, Des is a genius.
He's a genius. He's a quirky genius. They like him. One thing I think we spoke earlier in a podcast a couple of weeks ago, didn't know exactly where Manly fitted into this year, where they fitted. Were they a top 8 side? Were they a bottom 8? Were they bottom of the table? The one thing I've noticed is I think they like playing for Des. If any side plays for their coach, they're going to go all right. If they can keep doing it, Manly are around about that 8th to 12th.
Look, when you've got the Travojevic brothers in there and Cherry Evans, I know that's only 3 of and a couple of others, Tapau and whatnot. It's very hard to put them any lower than 8 or 9 or 10, I guess.
Yeah.
But in saying that, Tommy Turbo's out for about 8 or 9 weeks, I think.
That's a huge blow. We know that. I think they missed him early in the season. That'll be a huge blow for 8 9 weeks. It could be the killer for Manly for their season.
And it'll affect New South Wales as well. Just lastly on that game, Daly Cherry Evans, if you had to have any player in the competition right now kicking a field goal for you, who would it be?
Well, Daly Cherry Evans. Well, he kicks it both left and right foot. Apparently he trains and practices and practices it. You practice something, you succeed.
Well done, Manly. All right, the other game, the second game on Saturday, saw the Cowboys up against the Raiders up in Townsville, 12-30 to the Raiders. Greggy, I watched this game and I just couldn't believe that it was sort of history repeating itself. The Cowboys almost need Jason Tomalolo sleeping 24/7 in a hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, I think the big story out of this was the fact that he's not playing. That's the biggest story. Because without him, they just look nonplussed. Even Matt Scott, they took a bit to get going, some of those forwards. They got going for, it's like they were hit and miss. For 20 minutes they were all right, then 20 minutes they were out of the game.
That second half, but because obviously I watched the disaster against Cronulla the week before against the Sharks, and well done to the Sharks. They made the Cowboys look pretty ordinary, but they were right back in it. It was 18-6, then 18-12, and then all of a sudden Morgan looked like he had a lot more options, but they could not hold onto the ball, and some of their options in the last 10 minutes were just second-grade football, and Canberra just, they gave Canberra that second breath they needed, and they piled on another 12 points, and it looks like a bit of a flogging, I guess.
Or they played like they were the away team.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Josh Hodgson, the hooker for Canberra, was fantastic. He's
the Englishmen are on fire. They're good buys. He's done well.
The last game on Saturday, we saw the Eels against the Sharks. Eels running out 24-12 victors. They're the real deal this year, the Eels, this early stage. 5
rounds. One more round. I'm not going to declare them yet. They played at Sharks side, and I know I'm up the Sharks sides, but they played the Sharks side without Sean Johnson, without Matt Moylan, without Paul Gallen. I'll still give them another week to see how they go. Well done to them. Very well done to them.
Look, you mentioned the injury concerns. Now that's obviously Wade Graham, who's been the
who
whole
forgets
time.
about that too? Yeah, Wade Graham.
Moylan, Gallen, Woods is apparently is going
Woods
to be quite a while. Johnson was only precautionary. He'll be back.
Yeah,
this
he'll
week.
be back.
Blake Ferguson, he's got a good chance of being recalled this year.
Yeah, something must have happened. The discussions in December or the not answering the phone calls, because I'm still hearing that he's not going to make the side. It's the way he's playing. He should.
Wish it was a Queenslander. All right, we head to Sunday now. Storm 18, Bulldogs 16. This was a turn-up for the books. I read in one of the social media sites this week, someone had $10,000 at the Storm winning 51 plus at some ridiculous odds. So obviously he's got a bit more money than me, maybe not as much as you. It would have been a heartbreaker for Dean Pay and the Bulldogs. They led well early. A bit of a controversial kick at the end for Martin. But they were pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I go on these. I don't mind these records if you're getting a bit of statistics about teams that play well at certain grounds. Canterbury have won their last 3 games down there. They like it. They play the style that sort of troubles Melbourne. They were nice and loose in their back line movement, their forward movement. Then they tightened up. if they played like the way they played in the first 20 minutes, I reckon they would have won that game. But they tighten up for some reason. Maybe that's just maturity in the game. I don't know. But, geez, they had them on the rope there, I think, for a while.
Look, they've unearthed a couple of great talents in the last probably 6 months to a year.
Which is good for them.
They've got Remmer Smith, and now they've got another young guy, another winger, Jaden Ockenball. And
say that again?
Ockenball. I think he's good mates with the tennis player we mentioned last week.
Yeah. No.
But look, he's a big boy.
195 centimetres tall and 196 centimetres tall. That's the two wingers. I keep saying I think wingers are coming into this game.
He ran 298 metres, 3 line breaks, so something good's coming for Canterbury out of it all. It would have been lovely if they had another, if they had won that would have been a really good shot.
Yeah, but unfortunately they lost and hopefully they lose again this weekend.
I wonder who they're playing. The final game, we'll speak of your mob right now. On Sunday, this was a cracker as well. The Knights 12, the Dragons 13 down at Newcastle. Your man Norman again?
Yeah, Corey Norman, a St George Junior that comes out of Queensland. He kicked the field goal again, left footer. They didn't put enough pressure on him. I don't think the game was that great, but it was tight. Ponga, he looked good. He looked really good.
Fullback.
Yeah, that's his position.
Look, we mentioned a lot of the backs here, but Corbin Sims, he broke his arm, I think, in about the 25th minute.
And
played on half-time.
Played on half-time, just did not quite know whether it was broken or not. I think probably the bone sticking out probably gave it away, but he was all right with that. But my big story out of the game was Tyson Frizzell, not Corey Norman. Tyson Frizzell, 60 minutes was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I didn't rate him I shouldn't say I didn't rate him. I didn't realise he was that good. He is that good.
Yeah, he's outstanding.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's have a look at the this week's games anyway. Let's start with Thursday. The Broncos are taking the Titans at Suncorp. Interesting game. Tigers, sorry, yeah. I think the Broncos, they couldn't have played probably any worse on last Thursday.
Yeah.
The Roosters played pretty well. Everything went their way.
Yeah.
But look, I'm taking the Broncos. I think they will bounce back against the Tigers in a really tight match. I remember the first round last year against these two teams, and I think it was something like 2 penalty goals.
Yeah, it was.
That was it, 4-0 to Sharko. So, what do you think?
Broncos. I want to pick the Tigers. I think the Broncos are going to be that. They're ready to go this weekend. They've got to be finally for them. Head says Broncos, heart says Tigers, in that I like watching the Tigers play, but Broncos.
All right. Friday night, the Titans and the Panthers. It's on the Gold Coast here. Look, it's really hard to take the Titans. They're going to have to win this. If they're going to be 0-5, it's going to be really, really difficult to claw their way back in.
Ryan James, Wallace, they've got to stand up. I know Wallace had a better game last weekend. I think that's given Penrith the wrong time, if you ask me. I think Penrith are ready to... Penrith by 10 or 12.
Right. I'm going to take the Titans at home, I think, just because of the desperation.
Yeah.
They're going to need to. Their halves have had a run together.
Yep.
They'll be a little bit better for it. The Cowboys, on the other hand, they come against the Storm up there. Look, it's at North Queensland. That doesn't really hold many fears for other teams at the moment.
It doesn't hold any fears, Storm.
Yeah, I'm taking the Storm, and I think maybe by a considerable margin. Saturday, the first game, the Rabbitohs versus the Warriors on the Sunshine Coast. This game, the Rabbitohs took a game there last year.
Yeah,
I'm going to the Rabbitohs. I think they'll bounce back after last week. I think Braden Burns could be back, perhaps Inglis, but regardless, I'm going to take them.
Yep, I reckon that's an easy one.
The second game, this is a difficult one. If you think that's easy,
yeah.
The Knights take on the Manly Sea Eagles.
Tommy's out, Knights.
Right,
I thought Knights were disappointing. I thought they should have put the Dragons to the sword, but they didn't, which is good. But Tommy's huge. Tommy out, huge. Knights.
Look, I thought they were a bit disappointing too, the Knights, because any team generally that gets beaten by the Dragons, it's quite disappointing. I'm going to go. I'm going to go with Manly. Do we have to go back to 92, 93 again?
We try every week.
And the last game on Saturday, of course, is the Sharks and Roosters.
Roosters.
I think the Roosters, they're missing a few, and And the Roosters, just if they play, three quarters as well as they did last week, I think they'll be too good. Sunday, the first game. This would have been one of the classic games again of the 80s. The Dragons versus the Bulldogs. If I remember correctly, you did play a game against the Bulldogs in the 80s in the grand final. Is that right?
I played many games against the Bulldogs. Unfortunately, we lost one, but if you want to go back, we can go back to 1979 when we did beat them in the grand final. So it's 1-1.
I don't think there are any records to go back that far.
They were in 85 apparently. So,
Greggy, obviously the Dragons.
Yes.
I think so. I think the Dragons will be too strong for the Bulldogs. I think it'll be a cracker, but I think it'll be a pretty close game. They've really tightened up their defence, the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
The last game, this in round 5.
This is the hardest one.
The Raiders and the Eels. And both teams are in pretty good form at the moment. They're both in the top 4 or 5. I'm going to go Raiders because it's at home, but without a ton of confidence.
Raiders. Raiders by 1. It's my pick. Raiders by 1. Really good game. This will be the best game of the round.
Absolutely, yeah. I think so. It'll be a nice open game. I think... Well, they're the form teams at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah,
form
they're
teams.
behind the Roosters, they're the 2 form teams.
Alrighty. Let's have a look at some of the talking points really briefly, Greggy, of the week that's just passed. Firstly, Smith knocked back a return to the Origin arena. I thought this was really interesting. In a way, I think it's a little bit regressive of Coach Walters because McCulloch, I thought, had a fair series last year. He's not a Cameron Smith. He never will be. There's not a lot of options, I guess, at the moment for Queensland. You've got Jake Granville, you've got Jake Friend, who's injured, but there's only one Cameron Smith.
It's 100% that he was asked to go back.
Apparently so.
I don't think he ever would have, so I think it's silly that they asked.
Staying on the Origin arena for Queensland, Slater's now been appointed as a Queensland selector.
Yeah, good.
I think it's having someone who's only just retired last year.
Yeah, he knows the system. He's won $1 million, so yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, some former Origin greats now have suggested the great Greg Inglis is on his last legs. And this is something we're never going to do on this show is bag champions, and that's certainly not what we're doing. But I guess I think it was Greg Alexander and Billy Moore. They did state, I guess, fairly that he has struggled to get through this year. He's got next year to contend with as well, and potentially Origin. It does look like he is struggling at this stage.
It does look like he's struggling. 3 State of Origins in a full season makes it hard. However, he's proven many critics wrong before, and I think a last series would be just a thing that ignite him. Captaincy ignited him last year. He had a great year as captain. I think he'll play well.
His coach is no deal either. I think he's given a bit of a rest. No one's going to win a premiership in round 4 or 5, so I think he's still got a bit in his tank. Look, the form, we mentioned it briefly before, the form of the 3 Queensland teams in the NRL at the moment has been pretty ordinary, to say the least. There's been 2 wins out of a potential 12 between the 3 teams at this stage. We had a poll this week, and it was relating to which state looks in the best shape at the moment coming into Origin. It's only, I think they select the side in about 4.5 weeks, and it was overwhelmingly New South Wales.
New South Wales looked a lot better at this stage. Yeah, I agree with that.
So a lot of that does stem to those 3 sides, I guess, that are, fortunately, Melbourne are going well. There's a few Queenslanders in there, I guess. Yeah. Look, the last one, Greggy, only today. Obviously, we shoot on Monday. Val Holmes touched down in Australia today. There's speculation that, he does have a contract with an NFL club, and then we hear, no, he hasn't, and will he go to the Cowboys, or will Cronulla expect him to honour, his final year with them?
I think it's hard for him to honour his final year at Cronulla based on the fact I think their salary cap's well and truly used up. So I think the Cronulla option's out, so it's down to North Queensland or the NFL. I would think that the NFL's probably slightly leading. They get to 65, I think, their squads, and then to 53. You might find that he goes back there, and it's them whether he gets through to that last step or not.
Look, just like the last thing on rugby league, I know you're not a Cronulla supporter, but I guess they were the ones left, in a bad situation. It was sort of a sudden move. If he does come back,
yeah, but they got Sean Johnson out of it.
I guess so, but they can feel like, I guess, a bit sort of disappointed that he has gone to another club. But Sean Johnson,
they got Sean Johnson out of it.
Good comment. All right, that's our league our way this week. Next segment is from the pavilion. Some big news to get us going from the pavilion this week, Greggy, is that the World Cup team will be announced just before this episode's aired. Justin Lang has made his strongest indication so far that he's going to potentially open with Finch and Khawaja. They're averaging 64 together in the limited overs cricket. That's by far and away the best that Australia's ever had for openers. That means David Warner potentially might be opening 3 or lower.
Yeah, I think he's batted 3. Statistics are statistics. That was in India and Pakistan. It's a totally different ball game in England. In saying that, averaging 64 anywhere is fantastic in the opening partnership. I agree they should go first. They should be the first to have a go at opening the partnership. And then if that fails, obviously you've got Warner there. However, let's hope it succeeds. Go with them, Warner at 3.
I think you were saying earlier, Australia at the moment are a second or third in the betting at the moment.
Yeah, they are.
Why didn't we have a bit of a lunge at them about 3 or 4 months ago instead of the Titans?
I'll never, ever know.
Me neither. You never know. The Titans might shock us.
Let's hope so.
Look, let's go back to the 90s now in our next segment. We had a bit of a chat this week, Greggy and myself, being, I was going to say children in the 90s, but we certainly weren't, were we?
No.
I certainly wasn't anyway. But
you certainly weren't. Correct.
We thought it'd be interesting. We went to a lot of test matches and won days in the 90s together.
Apparently.
But it was a wonderful era of Australian cricket. It was a purple patch. That era produced the longest consecutive victories in Test cricket for any country in the world at that time. And so Australia was really spoiled for choices. I think a good indication of how strong that team was were the blokes who didn't get a run.
Yeah, the Darren Lehmans didn't get much of a go. He played a few Test matches, obviously. 28, I think. Jamie Sins didn't even get a Test match. Stuart Law famously played 1 Test match. It was mainly the batting. The bowling, Bickle and I think Caswich came along a bit later. They played in the 90s, but right at the tail end. Murph Hughes played at the start. So there was a lot of people to consider. I think there was about 7 or 8, I think, were guaranteed to play in that team of the 90s, realising it was Test cricket only that we considered, and the 90s was all we considered.
Sure. All right. Now, apart from wearing acid wash jeans and having a mullet in the 90s, Greg, you studied the game very well.
Yeah.
And you've come up with your all-time Australian Test 11 from the 90s.
I did. While you were wearing Ugg boots and going out in those, I came up with my side of the 90s. I said Michael Slater opening with Mark Taylor. They were very successful together. As we said before, Matt Hayden and Langer were more late 90s, early 2000s. So if we say 90s only, Slater and Taylor are given to me. Ricky Ponting, that's a guarantee. He was our best batsman of the 90s. Stephen Mark Waugh, I think that's a guarantee. I think that's a bit of a lock-in. Number 6 is an interesting one. I went with Damien Martin. Damien Martin in front of Darren Lehman. There's probably a couple others there that were around that side. Greg Blewett was another very good player. I just thought Damien Martin, he scored a lot of good runs for Australia. It was good to watch the way he batted. He's 47 around about in Test match cricket. I thought he was a very good Test match player, and that's why we went with Damien Martin. Keeper, Gilchrist didn't come into the Test side till 99. He played 1 days from 96, but didn't come to the Test side till 99. So for that reason only, I go Ian Healy. Shane Warne picks himself. I think Jason Gillespie picks himself.
Absolutely.
And Glenn McGrath picks himself. Then the last bowling spot, that was really open, really, really open. I went with Paul Rifle for my last bowling spot. His bowling, he averaged under 30 with the ball, and he also scored 650s in only about 28 Test matches or something, and a lot of really handy runs for Australia. So that was my 11.
Funky Miller couldn't push his way in.
Funky Miller, unlucky. Tim May was the one I was thinking about. I was thinking, do you go with 2 spinners in the side? And I decided, although he's a great off spinner, I decided that the side had enough balance and needed another pace bowler. So I went with Paul Rifle.
All right, look, my side was pretty similar to yours, very similar actually. Only a couple of changes. I thought Taylor was a wonderful captain. He would be my captain.
Yep.
Instead of Slater, it was really hard to choose, but I went David Boone. He did his apprenticeship in the 80s where under border they copped a few floggings, I guess, and he really earned his stripes. He averaged about 44, 45 anyway.
Yeah, probably a little bit, about the same as Michael Slater. My big thing with Slater was he changed the game as an opening batsman. Seawag went on to do the same thing. I thought Slater changed an opening batsman's role.
Yep. Look, Ricky Ponting, you can't argue that. Stephen Mark Waugh, I think we were talking about it earlier. Apart from being wonderful batsmen, and Steve going on to become a wonderful captain as well, terrific fielders, and both bowled really well in the early days.
They both were able to bowl. That's probably the other reason I thought Mark Waugh can bowl some off spin, and got wickets bowling off spin. That's where Tim May probably missed out. He could bowl. Mark Waugh could bowl.
Remember Steve Waugh had that really good bouncer, didn't he?
He did. Viv Richards didn't like that. YouTube that. Steve Waugh bowling to Viv Richards. It was a turning point for Australian cricket. One of them.
They stood up a bit, didn't they?
Yeah.
Look, Damien Martin, I agree with you. He was probably one of my favourite batsmen to watch.
Yeah, that's why he got my selection too. I just love watching him bat.
Yeah. Ian Healy, he came in
87,
88?
88.
88, I think in Pakistan, the series in Pakistan. And he came in after a line of keepers after Marsh retired in 83, 84. They tried about 5 or 6 or 7.
Oh, they did.
And they tried to turn batsmen into keepers in Wayne Phillips. They had, I think, Tim Zoa, Greg Dyer, Roger Woolley, and they eventually tried this young guy who was, I think, the second string keeper to Queensland.
Peter Anderson, Queensland.
Shane Warne, apart from being just the greatest bowler, I guess, of the last 50 years, a great cricket brain, and fielder, and very handy batsman as well.
Yep.
And I agree with Gillespie and McGrath and Gillespie did a wonderful job of being the leading Australia. Not only did they were they great bowlers for Australia, we were starting to win in places we hadn't won before. We were winning in the subcontinent, winning series against India. We eventually went over and defeated the mighty West Indies over there. And, of course, our record in England at that time was on the back of these fast bowlers quite a bit, particularly.
Yeah, well, Gillespie and McGrath both troubled Tendulkar, where Warne couldn't.
And Lara.
Yeah, and Lara. And Warne had trouble against sort of both those blokes. Warne was dominant against a lot of other players, don't get me wrong, but he struggled with those. But Gillespie and McGrath on the subcontinent and over in the West Indies were very successful against the two best, Tendulkar and Lara at that time.
My only other difference to yours is Craig McDermott. I know you...
Another natural redhead like yourself, yeah.
You thought about him as well. I think the thing that perhaps that you didn't pick Craig McDermott was during the 90s, I guess he started like...
He got injury prone.
He started getting injury prone, but he was a spearhead for Australia.
Oh, definitely. But
particularly the 80s, I guess.
The 80s, yeah.
But I picked him just over Paul Rifle. Yeah. Look, that's our teams from the 90s. We'd like to hear yours from that great period of Australian cricket over Facebook or any social media. So let us know what you think.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Another big week, our 5th week, Hamo. Well done to us.
Absolutely, yeah.
5 weeks.
Having fun.
Having fun. You've all got on board on a few things we had this week. We had the game on the Thursday night, the Bunnings Challenge, the $50 Bunnings voucher that we put out there.
The jackpots this week.
The jackpot's $100. So unlucky there. I think you said before, I think Scott McClellan got... he had 34 points. And
32, yeah.
So Thursday night again, was that one?
Absolutely.
So Thursday night, get your tips in. How many people you got to, what do they call it?
I think you've got to tag a couple
of
mates.
That's it.
But I'm pretty sure Keith will put that on.
He'll put that on there
social
for
media
everyone.
and point us in the right direction. So
I think
know what we're talking about.
You can tell that. But big week coming up. Hamo, I think that it was another good week. Great week for rugby league. Great week in AFL. Great week in all sports. Over to you. Wrap it up.
All right. Again, thanks for all of your support this last month. It's been fantastic. But until we meet next time, may the bounce of the ball go your way.
And kick to the corner.